Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this month's Fearless Fridays interview. And this month I'm with George, who's calling in from, I was going to say sunny Montana. Is it sunny over there? I don't know.
It is sunny Montana. It's
Oh,
not in
good.
the garage that I'm standing in right now, which is why I've got two coats on. It's pretty cold, but it's sunny outside, shaping up to
Okay,
be a nice day.
happy to hear it because it's quite foggy and wet here in London. So sunny Montana it is. There you go. And I
Very
think I
happy
found
to hear
you,
it.
George, in the Yes Tribe, right? So if we can dive straight in, and you can tell us a bit more about, I guess, why it was I jumped on you to interview and what your little story is in terms of leaving your job and following something more exciting.
Yeah, I think the post on the Yes Tribe was just saying I went to Yestival last year, and all these people were getting up and saying, Dave Cornthwaite, the organizer, was just saying, look, now's the time. If you've had a dream or something that you really want to do that you've been putting off, commit in front of hundreds of people, and then you will be chased to have to do it. So I was like, man, I've always wanted to start a podcast, but I didn't feel like I was ready, and I didn't know if I was sort of qualified in that position. And then I was just like, you know what? Let's just do it. So I just found myself walking up to the front, and then I just said, I've always wanted to start a podcast. I'm going to have to do it now that I've done this. So I finally started it. Got 6 episodes up to date, the We Need More Heroes podcast, and I was just writing on the Yes Tribe just to say I've made this transition from my old job, left university, and started working in finance because it was sort of the first job that I got. And I studied economics, and that was what everyone was doing, applied for some management consulting and finance jobs, and then just thought, well, I might as well take the first one that I got. It was not that long after 2008, so it was tricky to get a job. And so I went into it and then realized it probably wasn't where I wanted to spend the best years of my life. So ended up quitting, and now we're cycle touring from Alaska to Argentina, my girlfriend and I, about 17,000 miles. But we keep taking a very strange route, so probably going to be more like 18,000 at this point. So we're doing it for fun and adventure, and to just get a little bit more out of the everyday, and also for charity. We're raising money for the Stroke Association. And then I've started this podcast as well, which we're doing along the way. So I guess that's where we are up to date, my mini story.
And how far along the journey is Montana? How far along are you?
Not very far, actually. So we're a couple of thousand miles in. So we've got maybe more, maybe 3,000 miles. Haven't looked exactly, but we've still, in terms of months, in terms of time, we're 4 months in, and we've got 14 to go.
Okay. So in terms of what's going to happen next, is that completely open? Do you have some ideas? You know, what's happening there in terms of your plans? I guess it's a year or two away, so not super urgent at the moment.
Yeah, so I want to see how the podcast goes. We'll just have to see what happens there. And I think it will probably be something that I do on the side. I have a few ideas of what I'd like to do. I'd like to start a few community centres and have some really, really big plans. I'll tell you the 2-minute story. So with the sort of demise of religion, a lot of people have lost the sense of community and a belief in something bigger than themselves, and the structure that religion used to give us. We've thrown a little bit the baby out with the bathwater, I think. So now that we have the advance of science, people are like, well, maybe the Earth isn't 6,000 years old, and Noah's Ark doesn't sound quite that right. So we've got rid of religion, but we've also got rid of the institution that's really useful to have that supported that. So I'd like to do some kind of big major work to start to set up community centres to replace, I guess, a bit of the value that we had from that. But I also have a million different ideas, so we'll have to see. A lot changes over even a few months.
Yes, I might have to come and interview again in a couple of years' time, so watch this
Yeah.
space then. Okay, so digging into that decision, I guess, the first decision of quitting your job rather than the podcast decision, what was it there? Was there a particular moment when you woke up and thought, okay, now is the time to change? What was the process you went through there?
Well, I'd never planned to stay in a professional job. I always wanted to be an entrepreneur and wanted to start businesses, but I felt like I lacked experience. And the idea that I really thought this is the one that I want to put a lot of time, effort and resources into. So I took that job as more of a learning experience and a chance to meet people, make contacts. I moved down to London, so you meet a lot of people doing similar kind of stuff. So I always knew that I wasn't going to stay. And then, as we talked a little bit about before the interview, my girlfriend hated London, so she was trying to get me out of it every single minute of the day. And then I got qualified, and I just thought that my best friend, my mentor, and my manager at work, all the same guy, he left. And he was really a guy who I thought was helping me with my development in all sorts of fields. Big shout out to Vish and Docha. And yeah, he left, and then I thought that I just felt very uninspired, a bit of a lack of energy. It was a sort of a safe job for a lot of people. There was no energy or excitement in the day to day. And then I got a little bit involved in the adventure community with doing that kind of stuff. And I heard about a friend from London to Sydney quit his job and done the same thing. And I just thought, what is this really the best way that I can be spending my time right now? What do I want? What do I want to do? And it wasn't spreadsheets and risk management and conference calls. So I just thought, you know what, I'm going to take the leap, go for it. And the big thing is you can always go back if you want to. There's millions of companies that you can work for, or a lot of them in finance and management. So I thought that's going to be there, but the opportunity to do a huge trip like this, 18 months away without a mortgage, kids, or anything like that, any big tie, I thought now is the time to do it. So I decided, yeah, let's just go for it.
Great. I think that's a good time, isn't it? Sort of late 20s, early 30s, as you said, before settling down, before the mortgage maybe and the kids and all those things. So it's a great time to seize on that. And what's been the hardest thing about it? What was the challenge, I guess, either before you made the change or now that you have been making the change?
Yeah. So I guess sacrificing security is always difficult. I think the biggest thing was my dad had a stroke a while ago, so I moved back home from London to sort of help things out at home and do a little bit of my own life coaching back there. But I was working full time. I had a couple of businesses, starting the podcast, life coaching, social life, girlfriend, and hobbies, and I just got a bit burnt out. I sort of thought that I was this endless ball of energy, and then finally found my limit and realized I needed to do something different. And so the hardest bit, I think, for me was probably leaving my family when I sort of felt like I could offer value and help them out while I was back home. But also it was a bit of a double-edged sword. I was thinking Buddhism, they call it naive kindness, where if you give a lot and then you end up burning yourself out, then you can no longer give anymore, and then you have to be aware of your own state of mind and own wellness as well. So I wanted to leave, but also I felt, should I be leaving right now when I felt like they sort of needed me? But things seemed good enough back home and plateaued, and they wanted me to go. So that was the difficult thing, but I'm super glad that I did.
That makes me think of a few things. One that I've heard a few times is this idea that, you know, as they say on the plane, put your oxygen mask on yourself before you help other people, because often, as you said, I haven't heard that naive kindness idea, but it sounds like that. You're so sort of desperate to help everyone around you, but if you're not taking care of yourself, then you're not going to be able to do that in the long run. And the other is that I talk a lot about sort of balancing, you know, looking at different areas of your life in terms of success. So relationships and work and what else do I have? Sports and health and all these things. But actually listening to you, it makes me think maybe we don't want to be 10 out of 10 on all those things at the same time, right? There are peaks and troughs, and it is sort of a bit of a, swelling maybe in one area and you're dipping in another, and that's fine. Actually, that's maybe a good thing. Maybe we can't be at our peak in every area all the time, as you said, because even the most young and fit of us can't sustain that kind of level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's now that we have the opportunity as a middle class white Western person to sort of do anything. You can transcend class boundaries in a way that we couldn't a couple of hundred years ago. We can really, because we have the opportunity to do anything, I think we believe that if we're not the best person in every single field, then we're failing. And that puts a huge amount of pressure on people, causes a lot of anxiety, and actually it doesn't really matter. You should just do what you do every day and try to enjoy it as much as you can and be nice. I saw the author Terry Pratchett before he died in a lecture, and he said, I've spent a lot of time in studying religion, philosophy, and just about everything to try and get some answers. And he said, at the end of the day, I think it comes down to a couple of things, and that's be excellent in everything you do and kind, and always accept the fact that you could be wrong. And I was just thinking, wow, I spent so much time trying to find answers from everywhere and trying to always be the best in everything you do. And maybe life's a lot simpler than that. Just don't make it so challenging for yourself.
Make it harder for ourselves than we need to,
Yeah.
Okay, so you've mentioned a few things there already, I think, but where have you really been getting the support to address those challenges, maybe of security, and as you said, leaving your family, how have you handled those difficulties?
Yeah, so for taking the move to quit work, I mean, generally there's a stigma against that, and especially from our parents' generation, where the idea was you're lucky to have a job, you'll have a job for life, stay in it and appreciate it. Now it's sort of changed. There's still a bit of a hangover from that when you tell people that you quit a fancy sounding job, that to go and live in a tent and cycle around and interview people, they're like, that's a bit strange. But Escape the City was pretty cool. It was a nice atmosphere to go with, encouraging people to say, look, it doesn't matter if you don't know what the next step is, just take the leap. The Yes Tribe, Yestival was great. And then I think a few just long conversations with myself, just going out for long walks in nature and thinking about, consumed a lot of content, podcasts, just lectures. Thought, is it really that big a deal if I quit my job right now? And I sort of just realised no. As we said before, the opportunity will always be there to go back. So they didn't really seem like a good reason not to. So that was a good support network. And then, as I mentioned, my girlfriend was trying to drag me away. So she was just always highlighting the great things about quitting your job and following a passion and starting a podcast. So that definitely helped too.
That's good to have a different voice, because as you said, a lot of our voices are saying, no, that's crazy and you should stay and so on. So it's great to hear that you had that support in your partner. So. And what would you say, I guess now looking at you, I can almost answer it myself, but what are the best things about your current lifestyle as opposed to sitting and working on those spreadsheets back in London?
Well, I guess there's two sides. There's the podcasting and the cycle touring. So podcasting is an amazing excuse to talk to awesome people. And you'd never normally be able to monopolize that much of their time. So an hour or 2 hours of somebody who's doing something really cool, these guys who I would love to get an audience with. And it gives a great opportunity to skip the small talk as well, because it feels a bit like an interview. Then you don't have to talk about the weather and sports. You can get right to it and you could be like, boom, what's the meaning of life? What's the most important thing that you found? So that's amazing. I love doing that, meeting like people like Sean Conway and Benedict Allen and all these guys who I admired and thought, wow, how cool. And to also learn to scratch my own itch. I wanted to know, how do you make a living from adventure and your passion, and how do people get paid to do things that I thought I would pay for, things that were fun. So that was really cool. And then cycle touring, you just meet. So you meet new people every day. You get to travel, two things that I really love. Traveling always just smashes those misconceptions that you have about people, like coming into the States, into Montana, a red state, and all the Trump supporters. We definitely had some misconceptions. We actually cycled over the border from a fairly liberal place in Canada. The same day we got down into Montana, into a mining village where it's pretty conservative. And there was the first lady that we saw. She was about 4'5" and about 5 foot wide, and she had this T-shirt on, and it said "Trump built tough." And I was like, "Wow, we made it." And she was lovely. She was a really nice lady. She bought us beer. She let us stay in her garden for free, and so. All that kind of thing, I love that kind of stuff. Just because they have some, what I think are wacky ideas, doesn't mean that they're not nice people. So podcasting and cycle touring are certainly doing it for me right now.
Yeah, good. No, I remember that from travelling. I mean, as I was telling you before, I first went on a sabbatical across South America, and it wasn't anywhere near, that long, and I wasn't probably meeting as many locals as I would have liked, but I certainly met people from all different walks of life, people, I guess, like you, cycling or doing some adventure, couples, older people, younger people, who've quit their job, who are unemployed, who'd lost their jobs, who were travelling indefinitely and so on. And for me, that really just opened up my horizons, I guess, beyond my little bubble that I'd been living in, with people doing the same kind of job and the same kind of work that I was doing. So travel, I think, is a great stepping stone as well to greater things later on as well.
Yeah, and just getting out of your normal experience, like you say, to realise you don't have to live like this. Most of the time that we've spent growing up in our environment has you download a certain culture. you download the culture that you should work hard, you should get a job, all the things that we've talked about. Whereas you go to a lot of different parts of the world, and you go to Brazil, and people are like, no, you should go surfing and smoke some weed and do some yoga and just have fun. And you're like, wow, this is people's life. And then you meet artists and creatives and people who are living in yurts and all this kind of other way of living life that you don't really have exposure to back home. Natives who are still living a more hunter-gatherer type life when you go to the jungle. And you're like, wow, this is a way that I could live too. What are the best bits that I can take from all of these communities and bring them into the way that I live?
I love that. And you don't have to copy it exactly, right? As you say, you take the bits, and just the fact that you're sort of noticing what other people are doing and that it's so different, it just gives you your own ideas, hopefully, for what you could change back home as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And I guess final question then is, if someone's in your situation, sitting there at the computer, hating their spreadsheets and not really wanting to stay in that job, but a bit worried maybe about the security and, as you said, maybe parents and so on, what advice would you give them?
I think probably don't just blindly follow your passion. So there's a lot of people out there who are trying to offer help and advice to people. And some of it is more thoughtful than others, and some of it applies more to certain people than others. So you hear all the time, you'll hear somebody like Alan Watts, his famous talk on YouTube, his lecture that's everywhere now, I think it's called "What Would You Do If Money Was No Object?" And then there's people like Joseph Campbell, Follow Your Bliss, like these authors who I love and I really respect, but there's that's one side of the equation. Like following your passion is a great thing to do, but then on the other side of the spectrum, you have people like Derek Sievers and the 80,000 Hours organization who are saying, yeah, that's a part of the equation, but also look what you're good at, look what how you can offer the most value to society, because real happiness, which I think is what most people are sort of aiming towards, doesn't just come from doing something that you find fun all the time. There's so much literature and so many authorities talking about it now, but a few that I really like Daniel Pink's book Drive, Autonomy, Mastery and Purpose. So mastery, what is something that you really want to get good at? What is something that you can spend a long time on? But also purpose, like does this really matter? If you're going to go and be, say you love skiing, you could go and be a ski instructor, but at the end of the day, that's great for some people, but for some people you need to think, does that have the element of purpose that I need? Do I feel like I'm helping people? We all tend to feel a lot better when we think that we're impacting the world around us positively, and you may just frame that for yourself as well. I teach people to ski, they enjoy it, they have a great time when they come and see me, but also for some people that's not enough. They want to start a charity, they want to feel like they're impacting on a bigger scale. So I think somewhere in the middle probably lies the golden mean. You should look at what you really enjoy, what your passion is, but also what are you good at and what is going to feel like it's fulfilling at a higher level. And somewhere in the mesh between all of those things, you probably find the thing that's the best move for you. So I think it's a little bit dangerous to say just follow your passion, but it's certainly an element to the golden mix.
Yeah, there are all those charts, which I tend to use, but I suppose they're a bit simplistic, but it captures that idea. They talk about the ikigai sometimes, the Japanese concept that you have some work that you love, that you're really good at, that really makes a difference in the world. And of course, that sort of final element that it actually generates you income, because we do ultimately need to live. So I think, there is no magic formula, right? So I agree, people saying, just do this and ta-da, dream job, dream business probably isn't going to work, but thinking very thoughtful, as you said, about the different elements is a key part of it. So it's never going to be easy.
Yeah, it doesn't always work out. We see that in finance, they call it the survivorship bias. So you only tend to see the companies who win, and biographies. You only read the biographies of the winners, of the people who started this business, of Richard Branson, who took a gamble and then he made one of the most successful businesses in the world. But they're outliers. They're not the norm. Statistically, you're very unlikely, almost impossible, that you'll be one of those people if you follow your passion. That's not to say don't try. Still do that. But even just putting so much pressure on work to fulfill all of these human needs. Like we have whether however you want to frame it in Maslow's hierarchy of needs or whatever, it's only a very recent phenomenon that we require all of this stuff from work. Like I want to feel like I make a difference, like I self-actualize, like I'm challenged every day, like I'm part of a team, like I have autonomy. All of this stuff, you go back even just a few hundred years ago, you may go down to a mine and you may dig coal all day, or whatever, and you would get some of that stuff from different parts of your life, whether it be what you spend your pastime doing, if you had a hobby, if you played sports, from your children, from your family. And now we have this huge demand that my job must give me every single thing and make me feel like I'm living my ultimate life, and it's a huge ask to find a job like that. And I'm not. Some people do it, but it's very, very difficult to. So it's only one part of the equation. What are you spending the rest of your time doing? I think Al Humphreys gives the example of you have about 130 days a year not at work, with weekends, bank holidays, and your own holiday from work. So you can spend nearly a third of the year doing stuff that's not work. How can you try and reach whatever your goals are, or your means to self-actualize? How can you spend your time doing that? Do you want to volunteer? Is that going to give you a greater sense of purpose in the world? It's put so much pressure on you if you just look for a job that's going to give you every single need. And it's the same with a partner.
I was just thinking as well.
Yeah. We used to think that it was you would have a wife, and she would be somebody who you could raise children with well. Then you'd have a best friend. Then some people would also have a lover. Some people would have all sorts of relationships with lots of people. And now with the romantic myth that you'll find one person that you'll fall in love with and you'll never ever think of anyone ever again, and you're going to ride off into the sunset and everything's going to be perfect. Life isn't like that. And we put a lot of stress on relationships for wondering, why isn't my relationship perfect? So that modern narrative is a bit of a tricky one.
No, I was thinking the same. Yeah, the partner who, as you said, is going to be romantic, but also probably your business coach and your best friend and your all these other things, right? So it's an interesting point in terms of just putting too much pressure on that one aspect of your life. And I mean, I've seen it happen too. If you are, let's say, made redundant, or if you're not well, or if that relationship breaks apart, then, if you've put everything on that and the rest of your life is sort of unbalanced and you haven't been focused on, obviously that can be quite a dangerous situation. So I guess it's again coming back to sort of taking a step back and balancing across those different areas. And it makes me think as well, I remember when I was younger I wanted to be an actress, and I realised, I think one of the books I read was 10 Steps to Creating a Portfolio Career, I think that was one of them, and another one, Screw Work, Let's Play. And I forget which one, but it was sort of telling you to play around with the different things you wanted to do and you were good at. And it also, I think, had a quadrant where you put some things in, work, but some things were just for fun or hobbies. And I pretty much decided, I don't want to make it as an actress in Hollywood. I'm not going to move there and be a waitress and hope to get discovered. But I instead did sort of Amdram, where I was at the time, and sort of got that fun and community and fulfillment. I guess I kind of fulfilled that kind of creative edge in that way. So I mean, I still wouldn't want to have that kind of mindless Excel sheet job. Probably I'd be in that camp, but I know lots of people are really happy to have, a job that, kind of ticks the boxes and then go home and do something else. I think, again, as with everything, it's such an individual decision, but it's just opening your mind to alternatives and then having the confidence, I guess, to go with what you think is going to work for you, rather than listening to me or to you or to someone else telling you what to do. Just find what's going to work for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. The rhetoric around, like, you have to have this incredibly exciting job and go and be a mountain climbing guide, or else you're not living well, is again, it's individual to whoever you are. For some people, I used to work with a lot of people who, they love the security. Like, that's a huge part of their happiness and well-being. They like going to work, doing those things. They love spreadsheets. They love working out new macros and Excel functions, and that's exciting to them. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with having a wife and a dog and 2 kids and a Volvo. If that's what's right. It's the people who are doing that because they're either afraid or lacking the inspiration or energy or guidance to explore. They're not happy there, but they don't do it because they feel trapped by these often artificial constraints. They're the people that I guess we're really trying to communicate with, just being like, just give it a go. It's probably going to be fine, and you can work it out. Yeah,
no, that's a great distinction. We're not trying to persuade people who are happy and satisfied with what they're doing, right? It's those people who sort of really wish they could do something else, just encouraging them to take that step and to at least give it a try. And as you said, worst case scenario, okay, you may have to look for another job in the future, but in my experience, no one's ever regretted taking 18 months to go cycling through the Americas, or, to take 3 months to South America. So I think, even if whatever happens next, I think it's hard to imagine a scenario where you'll regret taking that time to explore a bit and do something different.
Absolutely. Yeah. Excitement in the everyday is also not to be underestimated. Like if you can do it and you have the opportunity, we're extremely lucky to be able to. But it's amazing. It's so good if you can do it.
Well, you mentioned Al Humphreys, just to say, he does the micro adventures, right? So all these, and the S Tribe as well, you just go for a day, a couple of days, a weekend. So it's not to say, again, in terms of money or even just time, you don't have to go to the other end of the world. You can create little opportunities in those 130 days as well to do many adventures as well. That's
a great point. Yeah, it's huge. And there's also something to, about like it seems in terms of the impact of each, probably starts to diminish after a while. Whereas if you have little regular hits of adventure or excitement every weekend, that's incredibly powerful as well. As long as you don't absolutely hate your job, then that can be enough to really tip the scale to where you feel like you're making the most of life. And on a trip for 18 months, now we're so used to waking up in a beautiful area alone in mountains, seeing deer and elk and bear running around. And it's amazing, but you really have to remind yourself, like, this is just because you've seen this for a while doesn't mean that it's no longer special. But our probably number one key skill as humans is adaptability. That's what makes us incredibly good at surviving, and why we've gone all the way around the world and we can live in Africa and the Antarctic and the Arctic and everywhere in between, because we're very adaptable. But that also means that we're very sensitive to changes, but not absolutes. So if we start doing something very exciting, it has a huge impact on us. But if you do something exciting for a long, long time, all of a sudden it starts to not have quite the same impact. Now, that's not to say cycle touring is not amazing and still having a great time. But you can still get a huge amount of excitement, adventure from an everyday type life and micro adventures.
No, I love that. And I think that's the insight I had, that I stopped doing the big expensive adventures and tried to rather shift my whole lifestyle to include more of that, I think, in a more sustainable way for me personally. But again, we're all different. So I don't think I'm made to be a sort of full-time adventurer either. So,
Yeah. What advice do you give to people looking to take what one piece of advice would you give to people looking to take the jump?
One piece of advice, I guess my one piece is always to take one step. That's sort of what my coaching concept is based on, one step outside your comfort zone. But it's just that, we talk about these big leaps and quit your job and travel the world. But I guess a little bit, as we were saying, just one little step, especially when you're stuck and frustrated. You're like, what do? I don't know. I just know it's not this. But what on earth do I do? I've got so many interests. People say follow my passion. People say do this, that and the other. I'm scared about money and so on. And it's so easy just to get overwhelmed and stuck. But I think just taking one little thing, go to Brighton for the weekend, or sign up to a course, or do something that you don't usually do. And I think those little steps can gradually add up to transform your life in the end. So that's, I guess, my little piece of advice out of the many things that I'd love to talk about. But
Yeah, definitely. And starting a business, I think after starting a few now, the thing that one little bit of advice on that would be, try and start it and test it as much as you can whilst you're still in your full-time job. We do have a lot of free time. If it's your passion, and Seth Godin calls it the dip. So whenever you start anything new and exciting, it's on your level of sort of happiness on this graph here, or excitement, you'd be having a great time because you're working on a new idea. You're not really doing the hard bits, you're talking about it with friends, and then after a while it starts to get really, really hard, and then get into the dip that they call it. And it's only really if you want something to really succeed, you have to be willing to wait out the dip, the very long dip, and get to the other side when you start to get the payoff with your business becomes successful, you get regular customers and all that kind of stuff. So it certainly takes it takes a while. So if you're going to start something like that, then I think try and do as much as you can whilst you're still in your full-time job. You do have a lot of free time. Well, you should have a fair amount of free time outside. So test your ideas, start selling whatever it is you're doing, build a website, do all of that kind of stuff whilst you're still in your job. Because as soon as the pounds stop coming in, then the stress can start to build up.
I think that's great advice for two reasons. One is to test, as you said, if you even enjoy it, and starting your own business is so much work that you need to love it, as you said, to get through that dip, but just to be so motivated to leap out of bed every day and keep going. And secondly, yeah, just test if it's a viable business idea, right? Because as you said, you don't want to quit everything and then find that nobody wants to buy your stuff, or it's not a viable business idea. So I think that's great advice.
The gap between having an idea and actually having a successful business is so much wider than I anticipated.
We can all have ideas, yes.
It's a huge amount of work. Almost everybody has thought of most of the ideas that you and I and everybody has, but not many people act on them. Yeah. And that might be because they're not a good idea, or just the sheer amount of time and effort to put into it. We started a few businesses, and one of the last one, Sistamo, a pressure sensor for the workplace, just learning about developing hardware, patent law, finding an engineer who can work on it, getting in front of businesses, learning about marketing, feedback, little sessions with people. It's an astronomical amount of work. So yeah, definitely don't underestimate that. And like I said, do as much as you can, all the testing that you can whilst you're in work, and then make the transition when you've had some kind of sale or some kind of proof of concept.
Great advice. So George, I could keep talking to you forever, but where can we find more out about you and your podcast and your travels, and where can we follow you in the digital world?
Well, we need more heroes.co is the website, and on Instagram it's just We Need More Heroes. So everything's on there. We've got 6 episodes up so far, and then all of our stuff from the cycle touring is posted on Cycling the Americas page on we need more heroes.co. Okay. So everything's there if you want to find some more. Great,
and I'll link to that in the comments below. So thanks so much for your time. Thank you for taking time out of your amazing trip. So really appreciate that you found some good Wi-Fi to have a chat and share your experiences.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was great. I really enjoyed chatting.
Thank you.